Outlander has finally returned after just over a year's hiatus. Season 7, Part 2 landed on our screens with Episode 9, and it's safe to say that the long-awaited arrival was definitely worth it. With Jamie, Claire, and Ian returning to Scotland and reuniting with Jamie's family, Brianna is left on her own in the present timeline. Meanwhile, Roger and Buck travel back in time, but to the wrong period, in search of Jeremiah after they believe Rob Cameron took him. Issues are certainly arising for every character. So let's dive into the episode and break down everything there is to take away from it. Here is Outlander Season 7, Episode 9, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The title of this episode was Unfinished Business, and that's exactly what Jamie had when he returned home to Scotland. He left for America several years ago, and when he did, there were many unresolved issues. Now back in Scotland, there was one issue at the top of his list that he wanted to address: his previous wife, Outlander. She had a stepdaughter named Joni, who wanted to become a nun. However, Outlander was not allowing her to do so. This was compounded by the fact that Outlander wanted to marry Joni's father. But she couldn't, because if she did, she would lose the land of Balrigan, which was in Jamie's name. When Jamie visited Outlander, he saw the resentment she held towards him and the fact that he had left so many things unresolved. She felt that he had stolen the potential for a good relationship, as one partner should need the other, which is now what she had with Joni and what Jamie had with Claire. Wanting to do the right thing, Jamie signed over the land to both Outlander and Joni, as long as Joni could become a nun like she wanted. Outlander agreed, and with that, the business Jamie had left behind was resolved. He could now focus on caring for Ian in his dying days. With respect to Claire, she also had incomplete business. She needed to tell Jamie and Ian's family that she wasn't from their time span, and that she was really from the 20th 100 years. This discussion was provoked by the way that Ian's sibling was going to leave for France, and Claire needed to caution him about the French unrest, which was set to happen in about 10 years because of the motivation of the American upheaval. This makes me keep thinking about whether Stranger will dig into that time span. I sort of trust it does, in light of the fact that it would be truly fascinating to see it portrayed on screen. Toward the finish of the episode, we see that Claire and Jamie are isolated. They get a letter from ruler John Dim, saying that they required Claire's assistance in Philadelphia, since his nephew Henry was injured in fight, and that Claire would be the main individual who could save him because of her insight into medication from what's to come. Claire chooses to go, and that intends that, for years to come, we won't be seeing Jamie and Claire together on screen. Roger's curve was certainly the most fascinating one with regards to this episode. He went through the stones since he trusted that Luke Cameron, recollect that frightening person from Season 7, Section 1, had taken him through the stones to track down the Jacoby gold. Roger and Buck went through the stones, and when they showed up, they accepted they had returned to 1778. Nonetheless, when Roger thumped on the entryway at Lallybrook, he was anticipating that Jamie should reply. However, it was really Jamie's dad, Brian. This implies Roger had wound up in an age previously, doubtlessly around 1739 or 1740. We also saw a young Jenny in the home, but the young Jamie wasn't there, as he was studying in France at the time. This raises the question, did Rob and Jamie actually end up in this time period? Or did they travel to a different one? When Roger spoke with the locals, they mentioned a strange-looking man wandering around the highlands with clothes and boots, like they had never seen before. This could very well have been Rob, but there wasn't a young boy with him, which raises even more questions. Roger is obviously deeply concerned, holding onto the Tuai Club badge and scarf as a reminder of his son, but it doesn't seem like he's any closer to finding him. The last time we saw Roger, he knocked on a door and we saw Gazelle Duncan, a character who had previously appeared in earlier seasons. She's also Buck's mother, known as the husband killer. It will be interesting to see how Rob reacts to being around her. I'm questioning whether Rob Cameron is actually in this time period, or if he traveled to a different one with Jeremiah, so I'm intrigued to see how this will all play out. Ian's story in this episode was based on the departure of a day-to-day existence, yet, in addition, the living of a daily existence. At the point when Ian got back, he saw that his dad was biting the dust and that he didn't have a lot of time left. While grieving his dad's looming demise and feeling remorseful for not returning sooner, there was likewise an enormous piece of him missing Rachel, realizing that he wasn't with her. Ian didn't anticipate getting back to America to accompany Rachel. Yet his dad's final request on this earth was for him to go out, carry on with his life, and appreciate it. This would bring his dad harmony prior to passing. There was a truly profound second when Ian bid goodbye to his dad. He hadn't moved a lot of all through the episode, however marshaled up the solidarity to bid farewell. The two of them locked eyes, and without saying a word, it was perceived that this would be the last time the dad and child would take a gander at one another. It was a strong second. Another close-to-home second was when Ian told his dad, who was likewise named Ian, that he had named his child Ian, showing the affection and regard he had for his dad. Brianna didn't have a very remarkable job in this episode. However, we saw her driving back from the Stones soon after Roger and Buck went through them. She was in tears coming back. That was in a real sense it. During the initial scene, as Jamie was voicing over a letter he had composed for Brianna, he referenced that she had strength, realizing that she had Roger and her family close by. Nonetheless, this was plainly not the case any longer, as Roger was currently in something else altogether period, and Jeremiah was all the while missing. It was hinted in part 1 of the season that Amanda had a connection to the Stones, and to Jeremiah in a supernatural way. I'm wondering if this will be explored more as the season develops and might help them find Jeremiah. If Rob Cameron isn't in the past timeline though, it still means he's out there somewhere, so Brianna better watch her back. My review of Outlander Season 7, Episode 9. I thought this was a strong return to the show, and I'm so glad we got a longer episode. I feel like that's the least we deserved after having to wait over a year for the second part of the season. With Roger traveling back to 1740, and us seeing younger versions of the characters, I'm starting to wonder how what Roger is doing will influence the future in any way. Roger briefly mentioned that he feared what would happen if Buck died before his time in 1778, and questioned if he would even exist at all. The stakes seem to be much higher now that they've gone back even further in time and are influencing events. One reason I'm glad the show is back on our screens is that there isn't much else out there set in this time period. It's not often you see the 1700s depicted on screen, and with the sci-fi element added, it provides a real uniqueness to the story. This first episode definitely wasn't as action-packed as the back end of Season 7, Part 1, but I think it was necessary to give the story a foundation to build upon, as we embark on a batch of episodes that will see the family split across land, trauma, and time. In terms of performances, they were all really strong. There wasn't a single one that I would fault. Each of the main characters always brings something special to the show. And even though it had been such a long time, it felt like catching up with old friends while watching the characters on screen. I think this part of the season has the potential to be really exciting, so I'm hoping it delivers. Share your thoughts in the comments section and subscribe our channel Next Level, press the bell.